Whenever I hear a discussion about a Destiny 2 PvP god roll, I see a generally prevailing mindset that there is a one-size-fits-all pan-ultimate god roll that you can achieve if you have this perk with this trait with this barrel, and it's not a bad mindset to have, but I feel like it's a bit misleading because depending on whether you're on mouse and keyboard or controller, the god roll that you have might not be the best for you. The Finite Impactor is a 140 RPM arc hand cannon. It has a very, very standard damage profile of it being burst damage, and it has a 0.87 TTK. I would argue that all of Destiny is more or less built on this 0.87 TTK. That's probably why they ended up getting rid of the 150 hand cannons so long ago. The Finite Impactor is a drop that you can get only from the Iron Banner. And with the relatively increased loot pool that Iron Banner has right now, it might be somewhat difficult to nail down this exact role that I will discuss here. But nevertheless, it is something to keep in mind because there's a fair amount of different perk varieties you can get with this. Its biggest competition right now is, of course, the Palindrome. But the Palindrome can't roll the types of perks that the Finite Impactor has. Not even just because it's an Iron Banner weapon, just its first perk column, which is generic to the loot pool, is special for this weapon as well. Starting off with the Iron Banner perk that is really good for this and what makes this such a fantastic option for controller users is this weapon can roll Iron Grip. If you're not familiar, Iron Grip will reduce your overall reload speed in lieu of boosting your overall stability. For console players, this is fantastic. Range is a great choice. It is a great option, but stability, I would argue, is a bit more important because here on console, it is far harder to control the overall recoil of a weapon than it is on mouse and keyboard. Mouse and keyboard has a much tighter grip on the fine motor skills as you're able to generally control the pitch and yaw of your weapon just a little bit more. Whereas on controller, we have a stick, which can be challenging to get quite right for what you're trying to aim at. As you can see the side by side here, the Finite Impactor's overall recoil and stability is much, much more noticeable when you're laying them out compared to the Palindrome. And of course, what I have here, the Dire Promise, which is sort of our control group here. But the Palindrome does roll a higher overall stat allocation. So is it worth trading off a few points of range for this overall higher stability? Maybe. As I was going back and forth with this, it's a difficult decision for me. Compared to the Palindrome, yes, I would argue absolutely. The difference between 6 or 7 points of range, which is what my Palindrome has on this Finite Impactor, you're losing maybe 1, maybe 2 meters worth of range. In real combat, you're not gonna notice that a lot. The ability to land shots overall is going to be far more important than just being able to hit targets from a slightly further range. The Dire Promise still takes the cake with its rangefinder role as having a 32 meter mark, the Palindrome coming in with roughly 30 meters, and this Finite Impactor with 29, 28-ish worth of range. Oh hey, I almost completely forgot before we roll on. I have a kind of a big announcement. We have merch. Yeah, we hit 50K, which again, thank you all so much for that. That's none of my doing, obviously. Thank you so much for the support, but we have freaking merch now. Have you ever wanted an Archibald Reginald shirt? Have you ever wanted the TDT logo on a sleek white hoodie? Have you ever wanted a I Heart Aping shirt or mug or sticker? Maybe a mouse pad? I don't know. I'm just excited that we have this opportunity. I know most of you have probably skipped through all of the advertisement for this, but this is more of a celebration of the success that you guys have all brought. Thank you all so much for your continued love and support. Right now, we have a 15% off for the next 15 days for the congratulatory launch of this site. So the link will be in the description below if you want to get that all set up for yourself. Look around, let me know if you get anything. I'm genuinely curious. I'm just excited to get this stuff out to you. But anyway, the next perk on the Finite Impactor that I'm a big fan of for hand cannons in general is No Distractions. No Distractions is a bit of a sleeper perk for dueling, as it essentially allows you to pretty much I win button every single flinch game that you get into, which of course can be very crucial if you're dueling a target where missing one shot, especially with something like a hand cannon, is going to be the difference between life and death. With No Distractions procced, which has been buffed recently where it only takes a second as opposed to a second and a half to proc, you're capable of reducing your flinch by 35%. This flinch reduction does stack with other hand cannon mods. As you see side by side here, I have my friend just nailing me with a Survivor's Epitaph into the gut to see the side by side comparison. You can see that the Palindrome and the Dire Promise stay relatively close, but I think where you're really gonna feel this is when you're in actual gunfights. I'm not a super big fan of hand cannons. If you've watched any of the content that we make on this channel, you can see I don't typically make hand cannon related builds just because they're not really my style. I'm a big fan of the Finite Impactor. It's very smooth and it allows me to stay on target and be incredibly consistent. The only real trade-off of this is that you're having to give up a damage perk, which to some people is a deal breaker. I completely understand that. Some people like to play around damage-related perks, so you know what? That's fair. But if you're like me and you are looking for a primary weapon that is able to just master the flinch game, which this weapon, by the way, can also roll high caliber rounds, meaning that you're able to flinch the other target off while you stay unflinched yourself, this weapon's pretty solid. The overall perk pool is about as large as the Palindrome, and of course the weapon drops aren't anything you can farm, you can target farm, so you're gonna have to jump into the Iron Banner and hope you get lucky. But there's a fair amount of perks out there for the Finite Impactor that are relatively solid. There's other much more standard issue perk allocations that you can grab, such as like the multi-kill clip type rolls. Keep your eye out for this particular roll. Stability is a make or break for a lot of controller users, and especially if you're not super duper good at controller hand cannoning like I am, this is probably the weapon for you. Give it a spin and let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoy these weapon reviews, they take a fair amount of time to make. I know this isn't as edited as some of the other stuff we make, but I spent most of the last few, oh, well, how many hours was it? 3-4 hours making sure that the shop was all good to go. So hope you guys can forgive me on that. Thank you for the continued love and support. Thank you so much for 50K. Bless your faces and deuces.